Alright, September. Pretty miserable month, September. It's if you're in school, you have to go back to school. Summer's over. 9/11. But I watched some good films and TV shows. That's something good that came out this month. I'll try and make this one quick. I mean, I say that quite a lot, and it always ends up being over an hour anyway. But I got a lot of stuff to do this weekend. I've got guys coming in to do my bathroom. Finally, that's been a long time coming, and I still haven't picked out the tiles. I need to get out to the tile shop. So I'll try and be brief, but I probably won't be. Futurama season 9, or I think it's down in Disney Plus. It's down to like season 12, but according to Wikipedia, it's season 9. Very complicated stuff. It was on Fox, and then it was on Fox again, and then it was on Comedy Central. Now it's on Hulu/Disney Plus. I haven't been loving the new season. You know, I finally got around to watching it, and I didn't really like the last one that much, because it's like good, but it's used to be great. You know. Like, this was one of the smartest fucking shows. This was like Rick and Morty before Rick and Morty. This was like the really, really clever and really emotional, like, sci-fi comedy. That, like, the sci-fi stuff was brilliant, and the comedy was hilarious, and the more dramatic stuff between the characters was really touching. And they don't really have that anymore. I mean, now it's just like a lukewarm satire. They'll take, you know, a current issue, like NFTs or something, a current topic, and make an episode of it that's like, puts somewhat of a sci-fi spin on it. Having said that, there was one episode I did think was really great. There was like an episode, like, it started off where there's like an inventors fair where people like Professor Farnsworth have to present their new inventions, and, you know, a committee decides who gets the award for the best one. And he creates like a Frankenstein's monster with the head of Cara Delevingne. And at first I was like, oh, fuck me. They've built this whole premise around getting Cara Delevingne of all people in as a celebrity guest star. But then as the episode went on, it became this like really clever sci-fi satire of fast fashion. And there's like a planet where all the out-of-date fashion is dumped. It was really interesting. Like, that's what the show did at its heyday. It would take a current topic and satirize it, and in a sci-fi context. So I thought it was a great episode, but most of the new episodes haven't been great as far as I'm concerned. Kinds of Kindness. I really wanted to watch this in cinemas because I fucking loved Poor Things. And I loved all of Yorgos Lanthimos' films up to then, but Poor Things was like on a whole new level for me. And I was really excited to see, like, Kinds of Kindness was like the movie that Yorgos Lanthimos and Emma Stone and Willem Dafoe and Margaret Qualley and everyone just sort of went off and made while they were making Poor Things, like on the side. And but I missed it in cinemas. Finally came to Disney Plus, and I thought it was great. I mean, it's really, really weird and dark and twisted in the way that all his films are. And like, if you don't really get Yorgos Lanthimos' humor, you know, this isn't going to be the one that brings you around. But I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. You know, it's bizarre, but in like a really engaging way. And the performances are fantastic, especially like Jesse Plemons was incredible in it, and Emma Stone. And, you know, they play 3 different roles in the 3 different sort of short films that make up this like anthology. But they all are connected by this guy, RMF or whatever his name is. I really enjoyed it. I found it to be really like engaging, and then like by the end of it, I wished it was longer. I was like, we're not ready for it to be over because I was enjoying it so much. But it is really, really weird and really fucked up. So, you know, be warned of that. Tootsie. I hadn't seen Tootsie for a long time, and I did a list, like an article of the 10 best Bill Murray movie quotes. And there was one line from Tootsie I'd totally forgotten about. It was so funny. During like the climactic scene where it's all coming out on the air live on the soap opera on the live episode, and you see Bill Murray watching it at home, and he's like, that is one nutty hospital. That's such a good line. And like, just that line reminded me how great the film as a whole was. And I remembered it being really funny, but it was like, this is like one of the best comedies ever made. This is like laugh out loud funny, and a great character piece, and a great story. And it's like not just a great premise, but like all the great gags and ideas and scenes and scenarios you can get out of that premise are in it. And you know, Dustin Hoffman's great in this lead role of this actor who can't get work, and so he dresses up as a woman and auditions for a female role, and then he has to like keep the jig up the whole time and like lead this double life. But it's kind of crazy though that like the male actor had to become a woman to get work. Like, I think this is one of the few comedies where the gender swapped version would work really well, because like most female roles in Hollywood are like secretary or like wife, you know. So it would make more sense for a female actor who wants to get a meaty character part to dress up as a man. But Tootsie's great. The other way around, Tootsie's great. The Walking Dead, Dead City. This was after I watched all The Walking Dead, and I watched The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live, and I watched The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon. And I'm not watching Fear the Walking Dead, because that's like 8 seasons. I mean, I did actually watch, I think, like season 1, maybe season 2 when it started. But it's too much Walking Dead. It's way too much Walking Dead. But I do quite like the strategy they've taken now, where they've stopped doing spin-offs about new characters, because they're like, well, it's not the zombies that are really the attraction, it's the characters people love. It's Rick and Michonne, or it's Daryl and Carol. So now they're doing it more like Marvel, where everyone gets their solo spin-off series. And Dead City is Maggie and Negan team up reluctantly, because Negan brutally, gruesomely murdered Maggie's husband with a smile on his face. So she's not too pleased to have to, like, forgive and forget. But her son's been kidnapped, little Herschel. So, and Negan knows, like, where he is, or knows the guys who have got him. So she kind of joins forces with him reluctantly, and they go into New York City to get him back. And, you know, it's fine. It was the same as The Ones Who Live and Daryl Dixon. Like, it's fine. It's not great. It doesn't go above and beyond. It doesn't bring back, you know, how much I loved the main Walking Dead show in the early days. It doesn't remind me of that at all. It's just, you know, it's a generic, predictable storyline. But, you know, Lauren Cohen and Jeffrey Dean Morgan are fantastic actors. And even though I never understood why they keep trying to force Maggie and Negan to be a duo. Like, can you not just let them go their separate ways? He should just be lucky she hasn't killed him. She's made peace and she doesn't want revenge, but that doesn't mean she has to be the guy's friend. But whatever, that's the premise, and it was fine. It was 6 episodes. I didn't hate it, and there's a season 2 coming, and I don't know if I'll watch it, because it wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. Halloween Ends. This one I missed in cinemas. I watched the first one of this new trilogy, maybe in cinemas, I can't remember. And then the second one, Halloween Kills, I definitely watched in cinemas because I was on a date and we were sitting next to like 3 Michael Myerses, like 3 people in Michael Myers masks. It's very creepy. So I remember that more than I remember anything from the actual film. So Halloween Ends is like the epic conclusion to this trilogy, which do we even need like a Halloween sequel trilogy? You know, do we need a trilogy? They're slasher films. This isn't, you know, Star Wars. But this set out to be like Halloween Endgame, like the big finale, Halloween The Rise of Skywalker. But it also sets up its own standalone offshoot storyline with this guy who was babysitting this kid, and then the kid ended up being killed, but the guy claims he didn't do it, but there's no evidence that he didn't do it, so everyone in the town thinks he's a killer. And then he goes off on this dark path like the guy, Arnie in Christine, where the dork goes off and becomes the killer, the evil guy. You know, that's nothing to do with Halloween, that's nothing to do with Michael Myers. If you're gonna do Halloween Endgame, why the hell are you suddenly doing this whole other, like, anthology episode storyline? You know, if you want to do the end game of Laurie Strode versus Michael Myers, just focus on that. But they just cram that into the last 10 minutes. But it was fine. I mean, I avoided it for so long because the reviews had said it was horrible and it was terrible and it was a piece of shit. And it's, you know, not terrible, it's just not that good. Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid. This is Steve Martin in like a film, like a spoof of film noirs. But it's like this weird approach. It's not like how Mel Brooks would spoof film noirs, where he just like does his own version of it, but a silly version of it. Like I think it was directed by Carl Reiner. I've loved every other Steve Martin, Carl Reiner collaboration, especially The Jerk, one of the funniest films ever. Hasn't aged super well. A couple of things in it that would be problematic today, but purely for something that came out in 1979, being a goofy, absurdist comedy, it's great. But yeah, Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid. It's, you know, the classic noir setup where Steve Martin is like a PI and he's hired to go into and get involved in this case, and it turns out to be much less simple than it seems, and it gets way over his head. But it's all mixed in with footage from old noir films featuring like the most iconic actors ever in Hollywood. And Carl Reiner is like stitched together like black and white footage of Steve Martin with footage of like Ingrid Bergman and James Cagney and Humphrey Bogart and Bette Davis and Burt Lancaster and all these iconic Hollywood legends, Cary Grant and Kirk Douglas and Alan Ladd and Eddie O'Brien, Ava Gardner, from like their old forgotten movies. And they've like recontextualized their dialogue from those old movies to fit in with this new scene with Steve Martin. It was really bizarre. I mean, it was really funny as well. I mean, there was some funny parts. There's a whole part where he cleans his gun in the sink, like with soap. And, you know, those parts play just like what would be the Mel Brooks noir spoof. But it kind of occasionally got a little clunky when they would, like, shoehorn Steve Martin into an old scene from an old noir film with Vincent Price or Barbara Stanwyck. But it was a very interesting experiment, very interesting cinematic experiment. Only Murders in the Building Season 4. Speaking of Steve Martin, Only Murders in the Building is back for Season 4. I think I'm not 100% up to date with it. I think I've seen like 4 of them maybe. They've done some really fun stuff in this season. I mean, I think this show is running out of steam. I think it's already been renewed for Season 5, but I think they should think about wrapping it up soon, because it's getting a little bit repetitive. But they've come up with some fun new things to do in Season 4. Like, they brought back Paul Rudd as his dead character's stunt double, who's like identical to him. Like, that was a fun way to bring back Paul Rudd without like retconning the death of Ben, what's his name, Ben Glenroy. So there's enough like fresh ideas like that to keep it going for now, but I really think they should think about wrapping the show up soon. As much as I enjoy it, I just feel like it's running out of steam. Somewhere, I was doing my video every Sofia Coppola film ranked, and this was one of the only ones I hadn't seen, or I had seen this one, but a long time ago. I saw it when I was like 13, whenever it first came to Film 4, after it come out in cinemas. And like as a teenager, I found it kind of boring, and I didn't quite get it. But you know, it's a very mature, grown-up adult movie, and I found it to be very boring then. So I watched it again now, thinking I can't, in all good conscience, you know, write up this ranking and go off the opinion I had when I was 13. You know, so I watched it again, and sure enough, I mean, I can't remember where I ranked it. I think it's like 3rd or 4th from the bottom. It's not one of her very best, but it's I did enjoy it much more now than I did as a teenager. Because it's, I mean, on the surface, it looks like nothing's happening. It looks like Steven Dorff is just driving around, drinking beer, like flirting with women who kind of think he's a bit of a joke, you know, killing time basically. But underneath all that is a guy who's very depressed and is in denial about how depressed he is, because ostensibly he's a successful actor. He's living in the Chateau Marmont. He thinks, I'm living the life, I'm happy. And then he spends some time with his estranged daughter, who's played fantastically by Elle Fanning. I think she steals the show. I start to realize, maybe I'm not so happy. Maybe my life's actually kind of a mess. So as I say, not one of her very best, but not one of her worst either. It's like in the middle. On the Rocks. This was the only one of Sofia Coppola's I had never seen. It's partly because I only subscribed to Apple TV Plus sort of like within the last year. So I was missing out on all their original stuff, and this is on there. This was wonderful. I actually kind of, before I even watched it, I expected, you know, this one didn't make a huge splash when it came out. It's probably one of the lower ranking ones. But I was surprised how much I enjoyed it. I mean, it's a really fun, really delightful kind of comedy about, like, Rashida Jones is suspicious that maybe her husband is cheating on her, and the husband played by Marlon Wayans, who's also great. And Bill Murray plays her dad, who used to cheat on her mom all the time, so he knows, like, the red flags to look out for and the signs to look out for of, like, is he having an affair? Because he had a ton of affairs. And so they kind of team up to do this investigation. And they're a great pair. They're really funny together. They have great chemistry. And you get swept up in it. Like, is he cheating on her? And it's, you know, there's so much, it's the way that Coppola kind of does it is there's so much evidence that maybe he's having an affair, but there's no solid evidence that he is. And it starts to seem like he definitely is, but also you haven't had any solid proof that he is. And it kind of just like keeps you on the hook as they're getting deeper and deeper into this mystery. You know, and for what is ostensibly like just a fun comedy, it's kind of cool that they're able to like just draw you into the mystery like that. So yeah, it's not quite as great as like Lost in Translation or Priscilla, but I really enjoyed On the Rocks. I thought it was fantastic. I highly recommend it. A History of Violence. This one, I remembered, this is actually the total opposite of With Somewhere, where I watched as a teenager and thought it was incredible. Thought it was an amazing deconstruction of the action genre and of the spectacle of violence and the celebration of violent people like who are called heroes. And now rewatching it, I thought it was a little on the nose in all that stuff. It's a great premise that Viggo Mortensen is this like mild-mannered like diner proprietor, and one night as he's closing up shop, these two guys come in and they're causing a bit of trouble and they're threatening the waitress, and then Viggo Mortensen like grabs one of their guns and guns them both down, and everyone in the town celebrates him as a hero and is like, you saved our lives, you're amazing. But internally he's like, no, I'm not a hero, I killed two men, that's not something to celebrate. But then he gets into this whole thing that he has this like hidden past as like an assassin, and you know, then it gets a bit genre, a bit pulpy, where it up to that point had been like a really interesting drama. And there's a lot of just like cliched things, like the most cliched way you can show like the destructive influence of a violent parent is like the kid does something violent at school. Like in Creed, I want to say it was Creed 3, the daughter gets into a fight at school like inspired by her dad being a professional fighter. And in this, Viggo Mortensen's son like fights back against this bully and beats the shit out of him. And Viggo Mortensen's like, hey, that's not how we solve problems in this family. And he's like, oh yeah, in this family we just shoot him in the head. And it just like was very, very cliche. And another like cliche way to show a guy being violent is like that he grabs his wife and is like getting like abusive and physical with her, and then that turns into like passionate lovemaking. And I don't think that would ever happen in real life, and it's kind of problematic to present scenes like that. So I didn't love History of Violence as much the second time around. The Mule. This was actually pretty fucking awesome. This is Clint Eastwood directed it and stars in it, and I think it was the first film he had both directed and starred in since like $1 Million Baby. It came out like 5 or 6 years ago. And it's a true story. He plays this like old guy, like a gardener whose business goes bankrupt and he has no money, and he needs to find a way to make money. And he gets like recruited by the cartel, like to smuggle drugs across state lines. Because if he's this old white guy, you know, and he's got a perfectly clean criminal record, the police aren't going to think twice when they see him crossing the state lines. They're not going to think, oh, he definitely has 100 kilos of cocaine in his boot of his car. So they use that as like the perfect alibi, and he becomes like a superstar in the drug trafficking world. And he starts to reconnect with his family a bit, because previously he only would show up to his family to be like, I need money. But now he shows up and he's got a ton of money. He's like pays for his daughter's wedding or his granddaughter's wedding or something. And his family are like, this is great, but where the hell are you getting all this money? And he can't tell them. And it becomes like this cat and mouse thing where Bradley Cooper's playing like the federal agent on his tail, trying to track him down. And you're following, he's trying to figure out who the mule is, and you're seeing Clint Eastwood keep taking jobs and taking bigger and bigger loads. That sounded way dirtier than I meant. I mean cargo in the boot of his car. It's a really great film. It just shows like he's a reliable fucking director. He's you know, he knows how to tell a story. He knows what's interesting about a character. Obviously he's a great actor as well. I thought The Mule was great. How I Met Your Mother. After I finished The Walking Dead, I was in the mood to like revisit more of my childhood favorite shows. And so I rewatched How I Met Your Mother from start to finish. And for the first like 6 seasons, it's a great fucking show. It's one of the greatest sitcoms. Really lovable cast of characters, and it's got this, you know, it's compared to Friends, but Friends is just a very linear, very traditional multi-camera sitcom. With How I Met Your Mother, they play around with non-linear storytelling and all kinds of different storytelling techniques and flashbacks and flash forwards and cutaways and things. And the cast are incredible. Like, they're all so fun. All 5 of them are so funny, but also such good dramatic actors when the material calls for it. And you like buy the friendship that they're these 5 best friends, and you buy that like Lily and Marshall are in love, and you buy that like Ted and Robin have this thing, and Neil Patrick Harris as Barney is such a great performance where it's like he's not a good person by any means. He's got so many flaws, primarily of which being that he like exploits women, but also he's like really vulnerable, and like he like the fact that his dad abandoned him is clearly like a big part of why he's turned out so fucked up. And you know, Neil Patrick Harris does a great job of playing this really reprehensible person as like weirdly lovable and weird and vulnerable. But then it gets to around season 7 and season 8, and it kind of starts to lose the plot a bit, because it's doing these outlandish, cartoonish things that, like, in its heyday, they would do like absurdist, cartoonish humor, but it would all be like the gravy on top of like grounded, relatable human stories that you could like really, really, you know, see yourselves in and be like, I was like that when I was that age, or like, oh, I was in a relationship like that, or whatever it is. It was like a very relatable show, and then they would have crazy things going on, like Ted gets into a physical fight with a goat and stuff like that. But then like season 7, season 8, the cartoonish stuff never goes away, but then the human stories stop being grounded and relatable and start being like Ted and Barney decide they're gonna adopt and co-parent a baby. Like, it's insane. That might be a crazy idea that Barney would come up with, but I don't think Ted would think that's a good idea. But that happens with any show. The characters kind of get flanderized over time. But even like there's one episode where Lily and Marshall have like a game show to decide who's gonna be the godparent of Marvin, because all 3 of them, like Ted, Robin, and Barney, are all desperate to be named like his guardian. Every show has that episode where it's the ones who've just had a baby have to decide who's going to be the legal guardian in case they die. Like 2.5 Men had that episode, and Modern Family had that episode. Every show has that episode. But in How I Met Your Mother, Ted, Robin, and Barney all want to be the guardian of Marvin after you know, in the case that they die. But Robin has never ever wanted kids. It's like the reason she didn't end up with Ted. And Barney obviously has this, you know, he started not a Father's Day to celebrate having no kids. Whereas Ted is like desperate to be a dad and desperate to like raise kids. So he's the only one where it makes sense that he would want to be the godparent. It makes no sense that Robin and Barney would want to be Marvin's guardian just as much as Ted does. It's like the writers forgot what their own characters are like. You know, and then we get to the final season where things really go off the rails, where we have 24 episodes dedicated to one weekend of Robin and Barney's wedding. A wedding where, like, they're gonna be divorced within 5 minutes of the finale anyway. I did love how they built up the character of the mother throughout the final season, with Kristen Milioti playing her. Because she like lived up to 9 seasons of build-up. Because she's so lovable, and she's so funny, and she's a great addition to the group. You know, she has great chemistry with the whole gang, and especially Ted, and she's like, every trait he's wanted in like the perfect ideal partner is like, she embodies it. Like, she's every bit the nerd he is and stuff. But then they really bungled that ending. I mean, it's so stupid because they had written the ending in like season 2 so they could film the kids before the kids got too old. But frankly, I would rather they rewrite the finale, because obviously 7 seasons later it's going to be a completely different show. 7 years later, they'd given Ted and Robin the perfect ending, and they'd like fully moved on from each other, and all the romantic part of their life was behind them, and they were just friends, and it was working perfectly as that, and the writers had decided she's actually a better match for Barney. But because they'd written this ending where Ted ends up with Robin and he shows up with the fucking blue French horn again, that's how they had to end it. And they had to, like, Robin's come so far in her life, she's like a journalist going all over the world, and yet, weirdly, she's back in her original apartment with a bunch of dogs, just because that's how they'd written the ending to be, because that's what she was living like in season 2. You know, and to kill off the mother, like, that was such a morbid ending. Like, why the hell couldn't you just give Ted a happy ending of being with the mother? Why does it have to be a happy ending of the mother that he's been waiting so long to meet is dead, so now we can just go crawling back to Robin, who it's never worked out with anyway? So that ending kind of fucks up, like, the rewatch, because it's such a great show, and then they really cocked up that ending. I'd so much rather they just rewrite the ending to suit the show that it had become by that point, and just shoot it with older looking kids. Who cares? He's been telling the story for so fucking long, they'd look older anyway. But whatever, it was fun to revisit How I Met Your Mother, because that was a show, like, when it was on, me and my sister would watch it religiously. Like, every week would be there watching the new episode, right up to the very end. The very disappointing end. Like, we loved it. And so it was fun to go back. It was very nostalgic to go back and revisit it. But the ending was very underwhelming. Beetlejuice. I reviewed this movie, and I think I was maybe a little too harsh on it. I was having a very severe migraine the day I went to watch it, so I was already in a bad mood. And then after it was over, I went to pick up some lunch for me and my dad at this cafe, and I got into a little altercation with a woman who tried to cut in front of me in the line and tried to claim she wasn't cutting in front of me, so we got into a little to-do, a very Larry David-esque confrontation. So by the time I came home to sit down and write this review, I was in kind of a shitty mood, and I think that impacted how I reviewed the film. Because I got a lot of thumbs downs on that review. I think a lot of people really liked this film. I stand by some of my criticisms of the script, because there is too many subplots. The whole Monica Bellucci thing goes absolutely nowhere. And Astrid's character and her whole thing with Jeremy is copied straight from Wednesday, literally by the same writers. They just copied and pasted their own work. But that's you know, it seems, I feel like I was nitpicking for things to complain about, because it's a really enjoyable, really fun movie. It really recaptures the spirit of the original. Michael Keaton is amazing as always as Beetlejuice. It's like a seamless transition. It's like he's as comfortable in the role now as he was 36 years ago. And Tim Burton did a great job directing it. I loved that he didn't use too much CGI. It's like almost all, you know, old school practical effects, real sets and things, real puppets and stop motion effects. So yeah, I shouldn't have been so tough on it in my review. School of Rock. I have been very open. This is my favorite film of all time. It's a masterpiece. It'll make you laugh. It'll hit you in the feels. It's a wildly entertaining ride. It's the role Jack Black was born to play. And just every few months, I need to stick it on. I felt like it had been a little while since I'd seen it. I was around at my parents' house. We were having a Chinese. And it's tough for us all to agree on one film in a situation like that, but in this case it was pretty easy, because who doesn't love School of Rock? And we had a great time. Beetlejuice. I went to watch Beetlejuice again a couple of days later, and after I'd already done the review, because my dad and my sister hadn't seen it, I went with them. And at this point the migraine was wearing off a bit, I wasn't in quite so much pain. I didn't get into any altercations with people at any shops or cafes. And so I was in a much better mood, and I enjoyed it a lot more. And as I was coming out of it, literally, like the review went up on YouTube as I was in the cinema watching it. And as I was walking out into the car park, I was like, yeah, that may have been too harsh. I mean, because I kept, in the review, I kind of keep harping on it's not as good as the original. I might be putting the original on a pedestal. Maybe it is as good as the original. It's fun. 1941. This was, this wasn't consciously, but maybe subconsciously, I was thinking about Beetlejuice and how I'd been harsh on it, and then reevaluated when I saw it a second time. In a video I did a few weeks ago, when a director's, the fuck was it? When a director's biggest failure yields their greatest success. And it was like Christopher Nolan made Tenet, and that was like his first sort of flop. And then he does Oppenheimer and fucking sweeps the Oscars. Or, you know, Quentin Tarantino does Death Proof, and that was his first flop. And then he turns around and does Inglourious Bastards, which also swept the Oscars, or certainly the Oscar nominations, and became his highest grossing film. And there's a pattern of that happening with a lot of directors. And with Spielberg, he did 1941, this World War II comedy farce, and it was a flop. And then after that, he did Raiders of the Lost Ark and E.T. back to back. And in the video, I was very harsh on 1941, saying it's not funny, you know, and it was a misfire. And I thought, I've not seen 1941 in a long time, maybe I've misjudged it. I watched it again, and yeah, I was right. It's not funny. It's a bad comedy. It's got great special effects and great production value, and a great cast with like John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd and John Candy and all these really hilarious people. And there's a couple of visual gags that are pretty great, just purely for how extravagant they are. Like towards the end, there's a whole gag where this guy's house gets knocked off a cliff, and Spielberg actually pushed a house off a cliff to accomplish it. There are a few things like that where it's impressive what they did to create a sight gag. But it's not a good movie. It's not a good comedy. It drags on for so long. I kept checking the, on the PlayStation, like, where's the DVD up to? When's this going to be over? And I kept feeling like I was closer to the end than I was, because it just feels so fucking long and tedious and bleh. So yeah, I regret being so harsh on Beetlejuice. I don't regret being so harsh on 1941. If anything, I regret not being harsh enough. Watcher. This is a great little thriller came on Netflix from a couple of years ago. Micah Monroe from Long Legs and It Follows is the star. She like moves to, I want to say it's Bucharest. It's like some European city with her husband. He takes a new job in the city, and she's like an actor who's out of work. So while he's at the office all day doing long hours, long days, she's just like in the apartment or walking around the city, just like killing time. And she starts to notice that like their neighbor, like who their window is opposite, is always standing there looking at her and staring at her. And then she starts to like, when she's out at the supermarket, she sees him, and she starts to like see him when she's walking around town, and she feels like she's being followed. But there's no hard evidence, so she tries to tell it to the police, and they're just like, there's nothing we can do. It was really great. It was like a really good, like there was so much tension and like suspense, and it doesn't let up. And just when you start to think, well, maybe he's not stalking her, maybe it's all in their head. Like the movie kind of tricks you into thinking that so it can punch you in the gut. And it's just a really, really well-made kind of Hitchcockian thriller. And she's fantastic in it. She's great. BlackBerry. This is the story of like the rise and fall of BlackBerry, where I think there's like a title at the end where it says like BlackBerry once had like a 45% share of the mobile phone market, and now it has a 0% share. And it's, I don't really understand how business works. So a lot of the ins and outs of stocks and shares and I'm the CEO and I'm the COO and I'm gonna, usurp some power from you, and couldn't really follow a lot of that. But Jay Baruchel's in it. He's great in it as like the creator of the BlackBerry, and Glenn Howerton of It's Always Sunny fame plays like the businessman who comes in, who like is going to take this brilliant invention and sell it. And he's hilarious in it. It's literally like he's basically playing Dennis Reynolds, but like Dennis Reynolds in a business setting. Like he's just as angry and he screams at everyone, and it's what Glenn Howerton's great at, which is like funny yelling, funny anger. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And there's been a lot of these like brand biopics recently, where there's like movies about how Air Jordans got made or how the Flamin' Hot Cheetos got made, and they just announced one, like a Coke versus Pepsi movie. And most of them have been shitty, but this was like one of the better ones. Plane. It's like an action movie where Gerard Butler's flying a plane, like a passenger plane, and Mike Colter, aka Luke Cage, is a prisoner who's being transported on the plane, and they get sent into a storm or something, or sent on a course through a storm, and the storm like downs the plane. They end up crash landing on this island that is like unincorporated territory, or whatever you'd call it, where there's no official government, and quickly like a gun-toting militia comes after them, and the passengers get kidnapped, and it's up to Gerard Butler to reluctantly team up with the prisoner, with the convict, to save everyone. And it was honestly, it's a very, very predictable film. I mean, there's like, Gerard Butler's like, oh my god, the passengers have been taken hostage, we have to save them, we have to figure out where they've taken them, and we have to figure out a way to sneak in and save them. And literally 5 minutes later, they're just walking into the camp and opening the door and letting the passengers out. It's so stupid. And like when he gets back on the plane and he's about to take off, like the bad guy's there with a rocket launcher, and Gerard Butler hits him with the landing gear as he takes off in the plane. It was so fucking dumb. But like, that's part of the fun with like an action film like this. And Gerard Butler and Mike Colter are both great and really cool like action heroes, and I really enjoyed their kind of back and forth, and Mike Colter having to like earn Gerard Butler's trust because he's a convict, and you get what you expect. If you expect Citizen Kane from the movie, the airplane action movie that's literally called Plane, you're gonna be disappointed. But if you expect just a dumb fun action movie, you're gonna be satisfied. Confess Fletch. It was the new Fletch movie with John Hamm as Fletch, and I felt like the mystery story was a little too convoluted. I feel like that's one thing the Chevy Chase films did quite well, was like the focus is always on his character and not so much on like how many twists can we like cram into this storyline, whereas that seemed to be the goal with Confess Fletch. But it was really funny. John Hamm was great as Fletch. I feel like he really perfectly embodied the character, maybe even better than Chevy Chase did. And it made me think, I remember reading somewhere Adam Reed, the creator of Archer, said if they ever did a live-action Archer film, he would want John Hamm to play Archer. And Confess Fletch made me think, like, John Hamm could totally play a live-action Archer, and it would be amazing. The Darjeeling Limited. I did a video about this, because I've kind of been doing a on and off, like, a series of Wes Anderson videos, because I did a video on The Life Aquatic that did really well. And then shortly after that, I did one on Rushmore that didn't do nearly as well, but I enjoyed making it. And so now I've covered Darjeeling. I don't know what I'll do next. Maybe Royal Tenenbaums, maybe Grand Budapest, maybe Fantastic Mr. Fox. It was a delight watching Darjeeling Limited again. I mean, I love this movie. And the whole point of the video was like, it's underrated. It's called Wes Anderson's worst film. But really, it's like one of his best. It's hilarious and it's touching. And I love the relationship of these three brothers. The actors play it really well. Owen Wilson, Jason Schwartzman, and Adrian Brody. Like, you buy them as brothers, and they're flawed, but they're really endearing, and like the Indian filming locations are beautiful. Like, Wes Anderson really captures. He's not known for capturing like these globe-trotting, like beautiful landscapes, but he apparently can do it because he shot India really beautifully in Darjeeling Limited. So yeah, check that video out. The French Connection. I hadn't seen this in a really long time. It's another one I hadn't watched since I was a teenager, but I really enjoyed it then. And it was on Disney Plus, I think, of all streaming services to find this on. So I rewatched it, and with something like this, I can never follow the police procedural storyline. I can't follow how Popeye Doyle and his guys figure out how to get Shawnee, or whatever his name is, the heroin smuggler. All I know is he's the cop, he's the crook, and in the end he hasn't cornered. I don't really know how they get there though. But I love Gene Hackman's performance. I feel like this was really early New Hollywood, when they were just introducing the idea of an anti-hero, the idea of a cops and robbers film where the cops aren't necessarily good guys. They like touch on ideas of like police brutality and like racism within police force, but they hadn't figured out the balance yet of like how to make a great anti-hero. Is like they have to have some redeeming qualities, and I don't think Popeye Doyle has any. Like within 20 minutes you're like, okay, he's a cop, but he's racist and he beats people up. I get it. But having said that, it is a great performance by Gene Hackman. And I listened to an interview with William Friedkin where he was talking about how Gene Hackman grew up in like a hippie neighborhood with like hippie parents and like, very open-minded worldview of like, come one, come all. And so for him, it was like really challenging to have to play this role and say these horribly racist things because he, the way he was raised, couldn't be further from that. I thought that was interesting that he like played this role that he like completely disagreed with. Rebel Ridge. There's a new movie on Netflix, directed by Jeremy Saulnier. It looks like it's pronounced Saulnier. I don't know how you pronounce it. But he's done some fantastic movies. He did Blue Ruin, which was fantastic. He did Green Room, which was like And they're like really, really intense thrillers. They're not an easy watch, especially Green Room. And Rebel Ridge was his attempt at sort of a more traditional action film, so I was really excited for it. And it was getting really, really great reviews, calling it like comparing it to First Blood, and First Blood's one of my favorite films, so I was really excited to see it. You know, the story of like the veteran, the like killing machine war veteran, rolls into a small town and runs afoul of the corrupt police force and ends up taking them all on single-handedly. But I felt that Rebel Ridge had like a needlessly complicated plot around that story. You know, where it's like there's so much backstory and there's so much intricacies in the justice system of this town, and what makes First Blood so great is its simplicity, you know? The cops try and run Rambo out of town, he keeps coming back into town. They bring him in, they beat him up, they trigger his PTSD, he escapes, he takes them on a manhunt through the woods. And then it's kind of a character study. Whereas with Rebel Ridge, there was too much plotty stuff going on for it to focus as much on character as Rebel Ridge does. As First Blood does. It's a really great film, really well made. I saw Stephen King describe it as a thinking man's Rambo. It's like, first of all, Rambo is a thinking man's Rambo. First Blood is a really smart movie. It's about the maltreatment of Vietnam War veterans when they came back from Vietnam. And like the hypocrisy of a government that will train like essentially kids to kill and send them off into these horrific war zones. And then once they come home, they've served their purpose and you completely discard them and they become homeless. Or they, you know, all of Rambo's friends have died from like Agent Orange poisoning. And it was like this really poignant look at how the American government treated these guys they sent off to go and fight their war. And I feel like Rebel Ridge just didn't quite capture that as effectively. But it's a very well-made action film. Grizzly Man. There's the Werner Herzog documentary about Tim Treadwell, the guy who he went out and would like camp in like bear habitats, and he would break these federal laws where it's like you've got to stay a certain distance away from the bears and you have to move 100 feet every day or something. And he just would ignore those laws because it wouldn't allow him to get close enough to the bears as he wanted to like observe them. And he considered himself to be like more bear than man. And he like named all the bears and he would keep an eye on them, and eventually he got ripped to shreds and killed by a bear. And they never actually show that in the film, which initially I was expecting that they would, but I'm probably kind of glad that they didn't. Because it does show Werner Herzog watching it or listening to the audio and being horrified by it. And if anything, that's more chilling because you can just imagine how horrible it is than if you actually watched it or heard it. But it's interesting, it's like it's mixed in with footage that Tim Treadwell had shot of like video diaries he kept of his own exploits going out into the woods and hanging out with these bears. And he would get like really, really close to them and like pet them. And it's like really tense. And it's intercut with like Werner Herzog interviewing all the people who loved him and who he loved. And like you'd see how he would go to schools and like educate the kids on bears and stuff. And the kids always loved when he would come around because he had like a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of cool stuff, a lot of cool footage he would show. It's a really interesting film, and I love Werner Herzog's kind of where he'll take like footage someone else shot of stuff and then kind of like build a movie around it. Like he did that film, it's called like The Wild Blue Yonder, where he took a load of footage that was filmed on the space station and weaved it into this storyline where Brad Dourif plays an alien who came to Earth to save his home planet, and he couldn't get anyone to help, and then his home planet ended up being destroyed. You know, he's nothing if not an interesting filmmaker, and I thought Grizzly Man was like a really great like character study of a real guy. Marathon Man. This was kind of one of the post-Watergate like paranoid conspiracy thrillers where Dustin Hoffman plays like a grad student / runner who Roy Scheider plays his brother who's like a secret government agent, and he gets mixed up in something that gets him killed, and then Dustin Hoffman's targeted by the Men in Black. And it's got the most iconic scene is Laurence Olivier as the dentist who's like the like torturer. It got off to a really slow start. I actually considered giving up on it because like an hour had passed and almost nothing had happened. But once this government agency comes after Dustin Hoffman and he keeps going on the run and they keep catching him, he keeps escaping, and he keeps running away, and they catch him and he escapes and runs away, then it got really exciting, and then I really enjoyed it. Agatha All Along. I think I'm a little behind on this one. I've seen the first two, I think. But I think they released the first two on the first day. and I watched them, and I haven't seen any others since. And I'm not loving it. I mean, it's like most of these Marvel series where it's like, in theory, it's fine. Like, I like the way it plays around with some of the tropes of detective shows, and I like the idea of like a witch coven storyline. It's like we're getting the band together, and they're like going around picking up this ragtag group of witches. I feel like the magic of a great TV show is rarely there. I mean, it was there in Loki, and it was there in WandaVision, which this is kind of a spin-off from, where, like, what a great TV show really needs is for you to care so much about the characters and love the characters. Like The Walking Dead was so successful, like the zombies are gravy on top of it, but really what you're loving is you're watching it for Rick and Daryl and Carol and everyone. What you need for a great TV show is a great cast of characters. You need all the people who work at the Bear are a great cast of characters that you just will follow to the ends of the earth, that you just enjoy watching. And most of these Marvel shows don't really have that. It's like the fact that they're Marvel superheroes, they expect you to be interested in them. But I'm 2 episodes into Agatha, and I don't really care that much about any of the characters that have been presented to me. But I'm sure I'll keep watching it. Maybe it gets better, maybe the characters grow on you a bit more over time, because I've really only seen 2 episodes. I haven't really given it enough of a chance, but it didn't hook me the way that great, first episodes do. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. This was on at the cinema. It's like a 40th anniversary, I want to say, like 1984. And it was really great to watch on a big screen. I mean, the last time I watched it was only like 2 or 3 months ago. I watched it on an iPad, and it's much cooler to watch Indiana Jones on a big screen and hear John Williams' score blaring out the speakers, and see those incredible action sequences, the minecart chase and stuff, blown up on a humongous screen. But I also, even having just watched it a couple months ago, I'd kind of forgotten just how fucking grim it gets with like the child slaves and the guy, there's like the overseer going around whipping the kids, and Indy is like forced to drink blood, and he like gets possessed, and the Maharaja's got a voodoo doll and he, like, stabs it in the back, and Indy's getting stabbed in the back, and the Mola Ram is like ripping people's hearts out of their chests, going like, Gali Ma, and the guy's just heart ripped out, like, Hum Nam Chavai, Hum Nam Chavai. It's really dark shit. There was a family behind me and my dad, with little kids, and because they were behind us, we couldn't see how little kids were, but they sounded like really, really young. They couldn't have been more than like 5 years old. And we got the sense that the dad has been like, oh, the cinema's showing one of my childhood favorites, I'll bring my kids to watch it. Forgetting how fucking dark and violent and scary it is. Because they got up and left halfway through. It was like the kids couldn't handle it. They were like, Dad, can we go home, please? This is going to give me fucking nightmares. But it, famously was like George Lucas and Steven Spielberg both were going through a bad divorce at the time. And the negative feelings of the broken heart and going through a divorce and losing your money all got channeled into like the darkest Indiana Jones film imaginable. But there's a ton of great stuff in it. That whole opening at the nightclub is so cool, where he's chasing the antidote across the floor, and they end up in, and Short Round is such a lovable character, and even Willie, people say she's annoying and she does scream a lot, but I probably would if I was out in the jungle and I was encountering huge bats and snakes and things. And it's a fun dynamic with Indiana Jones, because he's so much a man of the outdoors and so used to camping in the jungle that he just like rolls his eyes whenever she complains about this stuff. And that's a fun, like, comedic back and forth. His 3 daughters. This came on Netflix. I think it came out last year, or had its festival debut last year, but only just came to Netflix now. And it was amazing. It's like Carrie Coon, Natasha Lyonne, and Elizabeth Olsen play 3 sisters who don't really talk that much anymore. But their dad is sick. He's like on death's door. So they all come to the apartment where Natasha Lyonne lives with the dad to like stay with him and be with him for his last few days, and talk to the nurses and stuff as they come in to help him, and they're like forced to reconnect with each other and hash out some of their differences, just being under the same roof again. And all 3 of them were fantastic in their roles, and really, really they felt like real people. Like part of that's the great performance, and part of it's really great writing, where Carrie Coon is really like uptight and high maintenance and like complains about everything but thinks she's perfect. Like, she complains about everyone else and how they're a problem for her, but she's a problem for everyone else, and is too blind to see it, because she's like, I'm perfect, but everyone else is like, no, fuck you, you're an asshole. And Carrie Coon played that sort of duality spectacularly, in the way that like really frustrating real people are like. And Natasha Lyonne is like the stoner who's like really laid back, and from her point of view you can see like, well, I'm not hurting anyone. And from the other sister's point of view is like, we hate the smell of the weed you're always smoking. and you're clearly just waiting for dad to die so you can inherit this apartment. And Elizabeth Olsen is like like a people pleaser. Like she has just as many problems as everyone else, but you'll never hear her complain about her own problems because she doesn't want to bother people. She just wants to like deflect it all and try and fix their problems. But it's not good to internalize all that stuff. It's really, really rich, like three-dimensional characters. And the performances were fantastic, and the chemistry was fantastic, where they don't all necessarily look like sisters, but just the way they interact with each other is like they're sisters. And it had a really, I won't spoil it, but the ending, really fucking left me haunted. Because, you're watching it and it's this, sort of, three-hander character drama about these three people being forced to get along, and they don't get along, but they have to, and they're family. And the dad's there in the background in his room, but you never see him the whole film. And then they kind of bring the dad into it and he becomes a character. And suddenly it becomes like a fucking horror film. I don't want to spoil what happens or how it does it. But it went from being this drama where I felt like I was watching real people and dropping in on people's lives to suddenly I'm completely unsettled. Which obviously was the intention, and it was fantastically done. Sabrina, this is an old black and white movie from the 50s. As Audrey Hepburn plays the daughter of this rich family's chauffeur, and Humphrey Bogart and William Holden play two brothers from the rich family who both kind of fall for her, and it becomes this interesting love triangle. There's a lot of similarities with the Humphrey Bogart character and with Audrey Hepburn. There's kind of a lot of similarities with Casablanca, because a trip to Paris was a key plot point, and they have this emotional moment where they're going on about Paris, and it feels like you're watching Casablanca, but it's Sabrina. But it's a really well-made film, directed by Billy Wilder. And it's just interesting to see a movie with a female lead who's so three-dimensional and well-rounded and such a character with such agency, from the 50s. You don't really see that much today, even still. But from the 50s in black and white, that was crazy. But yeah, really good film. Dumb Money. This is about the GameStop squeeze, or whatever you'd call it, where a load of amateur stock people from Reddit came in and put a bunch of billionaire hedge fund managers out of business. Which is it was an amazing story even just to read in a newspaper. And it was so much fun to see those fucking billionaires go on CNN and cry and say, "We're just trying to make a living, we're just trying to put food on the table." It's fuck you, you rich cunt. And Dumb Money was a really funny movie version of it, where it's gets as many laughs as that story should, and it really leans into the idea of Eat the Rich and how these underdogs came up and upended the whole financial industry and bankrupted these unscrupulous hedge fund managers. A really great cast. Paul Dano plays the guy who led the charge, the Redditor who led the charge. Seth Rogen and Sebastian Stan play a couple of the billionaire hedge fund guys who lose all their money and have to try and save face. Pete Davidson was really funny in it as Paul Dano's brother. It's a really, really entertaining movie. I don't understand how a squeeze works, even though the movie explains it probably in a very accessible way. I'm an idiot, so I didn't get it at all, but I did understand when Seth Rogen and Sebastian Stan lost all their money, and I enjoyed that part. Frankie and Johnny. It's an interesting little romance movie from the early 90s. Michelle Pfeiffer and Al Pacino work at a Greek diner, and he immediately falls for her, but she's not really she doesn't want to date. She's had some bad experiences in the past, and so he tries to woo her, and it's just a wonderful little love story. Michelle Pfeiffer and Al Pacino are obviously fantastic actors, and they were great in this and had great chemistry. And Nathan Lane was in it. He was really funny as Michelle Pfeiffer's roommate. The only thing was, it got a little bit repetitive after a while, because she would kick Al Pacino out of her apartment and be like, "Get out! I never want to see you again." And then he would come crawling back with his tail between his legs, and she'd take him in and have sex with him, and he'd be like, "I love you, let's get married." And she'd be like, "No, you don't even know me. I don't want to get married." And she'd kick him out again, and the same shit happened over. They had the same argument 5 times. But frankly, that's what a relationship is like sometimes. It was a really entertaining film, and great performances. Vengeance. This was the directorial debut of B.J. Novak, best known as Ryan Howard from The Office. And he plays a writer and podcaster from New York who's really full of himself and thinks of himself as this hoity-toity intellectual. And he goes to a funeral in the South and meets all the simple folk down there who he looks down on. but really are just like good, salt of the earth people. And while he's down there, he finds out that the woman who died maybe had been murdered, and ends up getting his boss to like give him money to stay down there and do a podcast, like a true crime podcast, where they investigate whether or not she was killed. And he kind of teams up with the girl's brother, played by Boyd Holbrook, who's so funny in this as like just playing like the oblivious simpleton. You know, and it's just like the culture clash of like he's from the East Coast and considers himself an elite, and he comes down to this like rural town where everyone's just like, you know, not plugged into the media and just like a good, honest, hardworking people, and he thinks he's better than them, but they kind of like flip the script and are like, well, we're better than you because you're just a pretentious dick. I thought he did a great job of like directing, like starring in it and playing this character and directing the movie to make his character look as bad as he does. Yeah, it was kind of like On the Rocks, where it's like a great comedy and it's really funny and great characters and a lot of great character comedy. But you also kind of get swept up in this mystery, you know, as he gets deeper and deeper into it. It's really good. Masterminds. This is like a heist comedy with Zach Galifianakis and Kristen Wiig and Owen Wilson and Jason Sudeikis. Great cast, really great fucking cast. Where Zach Galifianakis is this like a guy who works for like the armored truck company who drives cash to and fro the banks, and he like fancies Kristen Wiig, and she tricks him into like stealing money from his company, and then they have to try and get away with it. And it's based on a true story, and the movie's really like silly, and I assumed they must have like fictionalized a lot of the true story. But then in the credits you see the real guy in a picture with Zach Galifianakis saying like he was a consultant, so maybe it's closer to reality than it seems. But it's, I guess, like it's like someone who's like really clever can figure out a way to make a lot of money legitimately. So a lot of the times these guys pulling off these big heists are idiots who can't think of a better way to make money. I thought this was really fucking funny. I mean, it got horrible reviews. It got something like 30% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is kind of why I hadn't watched it for a long time, because it just seemed like, well, the critics say it sucks, it must suck. But I thought it was so funny. I laughed so many times, like laughed out loud so many times in it. It's really funny. Cobweb. This is like a horror film on Netflix with Anthony Starr, aka Homelander from The Boys. And I watched it for him. Like I thought, okay, well, this will be interesting. It's a horror film, and it's got Homelander in it. But it's not very good. It's not very good at all. It reminded me of Run Rabbit Run, which is another Netflix horror film with Sarah Snook in it. And it's another case of like Netflix taking advantage of a hot actor who's in a really hot TV show right now and getting them to be in a really shitty, mediocre horror film. And Anthony Starr and Sarah Snook are such fantastic actors and deserving of such great material. And with Cobweb and Run Rabbit Run, they don't have that. And on top of it just being like a really cliched story with all the cliches of like, you know, the kid starts to see monsters in his house and maybe the parents are hiding a secret. It's really badly lit. It's like you can barely see what's going on in every scene. It's like, I get, you know, making it dark for a creepy atmosphere, but it's like pitch black. Like even when the lights are on, you can barely see anything. And just the story was basically, you know, the Treehouse of Horror segment in The Simpsons where like Bart has an evil twin living in the attic that like the parents are trying to hide from the kids. That's like the exact same story of this. But even in The Simpsons, the funny comedy version of this is scarier than fucking this film. Inside Out 2. Inside Out 2 came to Disney Plus after a fucking incredible box office run. But I think it was 1.6 billion, biggest movie of the year, which is incredible. Now it's on Disney Plus, so I rewatched it, and there's just as much fun this time around. I mean, it's, you know, such a great film, because it's, like, really, really funny, but also really touching. I mean, like the best Pixar films, and it's, like, Maya Hawke's performance as Anxiety. I still haven't gotten over how great that is. She's a likable, vulnerable human villain, for starters. She's, like, a bad guy that you can, like, root for because her heart's in the right place. And she kind of like embodies what anxiety is, which can't be easy to do. Like, it's one thing to embody a person as an actor, but to embody an emotion is tough, but she fucking nails it. I mean, everyone in the cast nails it, but anxiety's like the focus of this one. I saw the Honest trailer, and they do point out like how unrealistic it is that Riley like conquers anxiety in a weekend, when it takes like years and years of therapy, and like you don't just have one panic attack and figure out how to be done with anxiety forever when you're 13. Obviously they have a story to tell. They have to, you know, they have to end it in a satisfying way. They can't just be like, all right, so there's the first panic attack, going to be a lot more, the end. You know, they have to bring some closure. But other than that, it's a great fucking movie. Megalopolis. As I'm recording this, I actually just recorded my review for Megalopolis, but by the time this video comes out, the review will have come out. But this was, even with it getting horrible reviews, and with every distributor in Hollywood saying, we don't want to put this in cinemas. Even knowing all that, this was a disappointment. You know, this was like Francis Ford Coppola's comeback. The comeback of the director of The Godfather and Apocalypse Now and The Conversation. And he comes back with this. This is the comeback. It's, I mean, I love, like, weird movies, you know? I mean, I loved Kinds of Kindness, and that was weird as shit. But this is, like, weird in a bad way. It's weird in a, like, what are we doing? What are we doing here? And I was so bored. It was so tedious. I didn't care about any of the characters. I wasn't interested, you know, in the story, because Coppola's barely interested in the story. It's just there to facilitate, like, soundbite after soundbite after soundbite about, we are going to destroy ourselves and we must create a future for the next generation, but we must not let the now destroy the forever. And it just, you know, fuck off. I wanted to like it. I really wanted to like it because I love Coppola. And I was so excited that he's back and that he self-financed this crazy passion project. But it's just not a good movie. It's just a bad fucking movie. Lost. After How I Met Your Mother, I thought, well, let's keep it going. Keep going back to the old childhood favorites. And Lost, like, I didn't watch it when it was on, but probably about 10 years ago. Me and my sister, like, binge watched it. For like 3 months, that's like all we did. We'd get home from school and just fucking watch Lost non-stop. And then I guess the weekend we watched Lost for 2 days straight, you know. And I actually remember, as you know, the How I Met Your Mother ending is very disappointing. The Walking Dead didn't even have an ending, really. I actually remember quite liking how Lost ended, but I don't really remember it that well, because it was 10 years ago, and we binge-watched it in such quick succession. But, I mean, I'm only in the middle of Season 1. I think I'm on about episode 11 or 12 of Season 1 right now, so I'm still a long way away. But I'm right back into it. Like, I'm right back into the characters, and Jack, and Kate, and Sawyer, and Charlie, and Hurley, and Claire. All these lovable, fucking wonderful characters. Son and Jin, and fucking Michael and Walt. And I'm like, right, it's like we're having like a 10-year high school reunion. And I'm back with all my friends who I haven't seen in 10 years. It's been great. I mean, it gets a little crazy down the line when they have flash forwards instead of flashbacks, and then flash sideways to like an alternate universe where the plane landed safely. So I don't know how all that will hold up, but Season 1 is a fucking masterpiece. The pilot is one of the greatest TV pilots of all time. It's like a movie. But I'm only just getting going with Lost, and I'll have much more to say about Lost next month. Yeah, that's everything I watched in September, and now we're going into October. And I'll speak to you at the end of October. What have you all been watching? Let me know some recommendations of some films or TV shows you've been watching in the comments. And now I have to go and buy tiles. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked the video. Remember to like and subscribe and click on the little bell. And also seize the day and call your mom and be kind to yourself.